The Observer's calendar for November 2025 on episode 507 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. So, Shane, you just asked me a question. You just want to ask me that question again?
Yes. So you were out observing last night at your observatory, and I
Yeah.
just was wondering if that light from across the lake was an issue, or what's the latest on that story?
There sort of is no update, but some update, which is the best update, which is the light update. There's no light.
Uh,
But I also have no word. I kind of wrote a lot of letters and put in a lot of complaints, and there's there's been no reply, but also the light has not been on, which is kind of surprising. We kind of sort of thought maybe a dimmer light was on that was still a bit on the bright side, but I think we determined it wasn't quite that light. There are a few over there. There's one that's in that general area that is too bright and probably does need to be addressed as well. And then also like the municipality, and I did go over and I think they built another building, and that building is blocking a light, and then it has another light on it. Anyway, so there's three or four or five or six municipal lights, and then there's one across the way that needs to be one or two that need to be. We need to get those addressed as well as part of this. Like, kind of maybe let a couple lights slide too far, and then this is kind of what you get into. So don't let that happen to you folks. If you start seeing lights like this, then I would say take action sooner than later. And then my neighbor who has sensor lights, the sensor doesn't work that well in the new lights he put in last year. And if it's windy like it has been, the light will go off and then come on about a minute later and stay on for 5 minutes, then go off for a minute and then come on for 5 minutes. And it kind of does that all night. So I got to chat to him about that too. So anyhow, thus is the story of light. But the lights that are on now aren't showstoppers, right?
mhm.
That's the moral of the story. They are not dark sky compliant. They are not in compliant with the Canadian Building Code. They're not in the ones across the way anyway are not in compliance with their own building regulations. I will say that they do need to be addressed. And my neighbor's pretty good. Love the guy. I just got to chat to him about that light. I'm sure we can get that sorted out. It was working pretty good for a while there, so I'm not really sure what happened. But anyhow, that's sort of long story short. In other news, finally able to test the batter click lock in the 7 inch.
Ah, yeah, and
Those are awesome.
yeah, they just work so well.
This is, and we've talked about them before. I've seen some people don't like them. I'm not sure why they don't like them because I really do not like using a telescope without a batter click lock. I'm just going to come out and say that they are not very expensive for what you get. Gee, I think the one that I have cost 50 or $60 when I bought it. You can probably add on your inflationary other things that we won't get into, but not that expensive for how it transforms a telescope and makes it that much more usable, in my opinion. It's sort of a must-have accessory. I feel like I didn't think it was as much of a must-have until the more and more I use them.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, they just make the whole like maybe not so much on the diagonal or sorry on the visual back, although it can be handy, but like on the diagonal when you're changing eyepieces, it is just so slick.
Mm. I have one on it's not a batter, it's an APM on one of my diagonals. On the Lumicon diagonal, I don't. It just has um, it has a couple screws that are nylon, so it's fine. But the way that I use mine is I stick it right on like I said, the visual back, and then it allows for a few things. But one of them is that with the multiple filter selector in the Lumicon diagonal, you can't rotate it to a comfortable position, which you need to do, especially when you're looking towards the horizon. Without that, otherwise, there's like two or three positions you can get it into, but then like one night I was standing on a ladder and it just was like kind of ridiculous. Like, what am I doing? How much is this going to cost to get straightened out? And it was I had to get a little adapter from Moonlight. They made me one. It cost $50, I think. So it's not a big expense once you're already into 7-inch refractors anyway, sadly. And yeah, it just makes it so much easier to change those eyepiece positions. And as well, I've got heavy eyepieces, as you know, like the 17 millimeter Explore Science is one of the most heavy 2-inch eyepieces you can get, I
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
Weighs about 3 pounds. And when you're putting that into the giant Lumicon multiple filter selector diagonal, which also weighs about 2 or 3 pounds, and you load that full of filters, which each weigh not that much, but regardless, you're up over 6 pounds. Let's just say, let's call it 6 pounds once it's all said and done. That's a lot of weight to have on there, and so the it's pretty difficult to get your set screws screwed in. And you're like, I hate futzing with stuff. I just want to slack off, rotate the diagonal, tighten the bait or click lock, and then observe and not worry about it rotating or whatever. And it didn't do it all last night. Didn't rotate, didn't budge. I didn't really have to come hard onto it. It just works. And
Hmm.
that's a product that removes futz factor. It makes the telescope easier to use. I can use more accessories and it's less worry. So, and like I said, for not a whole lot of money, it's one of the best accessories I think that people aren't probably using out there.
Yeah, yeah, it really is quite nice.
This podcast is not sponsored by Batter. I just like it. I bought it myself. I've got a couple, and I will probably buy more actually. Probably, I would like to see if I can get one to adapt onto the Lumicon diagonal itself for the eyepiece, and they are just really good, and they work, and they make observing easier.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just kind of a great thing. All right, what else? We observed those comets. We're not going to talk about the comets in this show because we did a whole comet show on the two bright comets, which are A6 Lemon and R2 Swan. So you can go back and listen to that. So I don't think we'll cover comets in this because that's we did that. We will have released that early when you're listening to this. We just recorded it, but we're going to go out of order and release that show, and then people can go out hopefully and enjoy observing those comets, and perhaps even still be observing those when this show comes out in whenever it is, a couple weeks, Shane.
Yeah, for sure.
I was out and did some other observing with Mike after we were comet observing. Observed Saturn Nebula NGC 7009. We were trying to see those Ansei, and I can't say that we saw the Ansei 100%, but kind of sort of could see some of those Saturn ring-like features in NGC 7009, also called the Saturn Nebula. But yeah, we tried, but our seeing last night was kind of crappy, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, you were saying it got a little soft as the night went on.
Yeah, and that's what we were seeing. It got very unstable and then it got soft. So I think I'm guessing that the clouds were starting to form, like maybe something in the atmosphere changed and then it got unstable and then caused moisture to start turning into cloud high up. And then the aurora kicked up too. So it was a trifecta of bad conditions. Early on, it
Hmm.
was awesome. We were just doing comets. It was really good, which is great. That's kind of what you'd want. Looked at M15, which is a globular cluster up in Perseus, and there's I'm trying to remember if it's associated or not. I feel like it is, but now that I say it, I'm not so sure. But Peas 1 is a planetary nebula that's either associated or in front of M15, and we didn't see it. That's tough. Mike and I have tried to see that a bunch of times. We're really going to try once we get his C11 up here and running next to my scope, and that's something we're gonna take an evening and do it. We've probably wasted 2 or 3 evenings of time over the past 4 or 5 years trying to see that, and that is our on our kill list, I guess, to put it weird like that.
Well,
Um,
persistence is key, right?
yeah, it's just tough. It's just tough. Um, yeah, to put it bluntly. But I think we just need a bigger scope, to be honest.
Mm,
Like
a little more aperture.
I think like a 16 inch, because what happens is you want to use the filter, but by the time you're at the power where you're making the globular big enough that you'd be able to differentiate the nebula, we're sort of out of the filter range, right? We're into like 10 millimeter eyepieces or less, and filters have less and less use at those smaller exit pupils typically. So we're under a 2 millimeter exit pupil. Probably to get it to the right size, we'd be looking at a 1 millimeter exit pupil on my 7 inch. So you just need a larger aperture. I think like a 16 inch probably. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get a big scope here one day and can do it. Helix, we took a look at the Helix. It wasn't as good as when I looked at it a couple weeks back, simply because of those deteriorating conditions. But we did look at it as it crossed the meridian, and like we could see a few different levels of nebulosity, and we could see the central hole, which honestly, I got to admit, I kind of sort of struggled to see before. And I did dig up a sketch from 2022 where I was ecstatic having seen half a dozen stars in the helix, as well as a faint idea of the central hole. But the 7 inch really does show it as a central hole quite well. And when we looked at the California Nebula, yeah, we could kind of barely see it, which was surprising. It was about 40 degrees up, but because it was sort of in where the aurora is and kind of back towards the city, I guess, and with the conditions kind of fogging up almost, it just was enough to extinguish it, sadly.
Mm, okay.
So, we did look at NGC 6940. This is a cluster put on people's radar. It's a beautiful open cluster up. I think it's just over like the Vulpecula Cygnus border, but it's in Cygnus, off towards the Veil Nebula. Quite lovely. You should be able to see it from a city, but a reasonably dark site. It looks like a beautiful big patch of Milky Way to your eye, and then the binoculars. It's quite nice, and the telescope's very beautiful. We spent a long time on the Crescent and Veil Nebulae, just before it got poor, and yeah, we could that Crescent NGC 6888688. We were able to see. Are you familiar with that one? It's a bright star. It's a Wolf-Rayet star, and it has like a bright streak of nebulosity, and then it has kind of a hook, and then there's some fainter nebulosity that fill in from that hook.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's sort of a frequently photographed nebula. The first time I saw it was about 30 years ago, not quite 30 years ago, but a while back. And just like literally, I think it was almost my first observing session with the RASC. And the person who is now the graphic designer on the calendar with me, Mike Gatto, he had it in his agent Sambudo home built telescope,
Hmm.
and beautiful, beautiful telescope, little Dobsonian traditional build, and and he showed it to me, and I could only see the streak, or at least only remember seeing the streak, and then there is quite a bit of other detail. Well, when we were observing it last night, we were able to see like it's almost like a grainy, convoluted sort of brain like structure, sort of like a lot of rolls or freckles within the gaps between sort of the bright arcs. And I'd seen it when I was sketching it there a couple of weeks ago, and then I put it on and had Mike look and asked if he saw that as well. And he agreed, yeah, that was quite apparent. And then also there's another star that the nebulosity kind of extends out to, which doesn't even show up in some of the photographs. In some of the photographs it does though. And I had sketched that not knowing, I sort of was sketching it without being too aware, and then noticed that. And I assumed it was an error and thought about, as I was making a good copy of my sketch, I thought about even removing that, but decided just to keep it in. And then after I put it in, I thought, oh, I got to look at more images and see like how bad did I do? But you can see that in some of the images. So I'm guessing
Hmm.
it's just the difference in visual versus sort of more easy photography. I know in some of the better or maybe different wavelengths of photos, you can see that feature. But anyway, just kind of one of those things. And then the Veil, we looked at the east, west, Pickering's Triangle. We spent a long time comparing the UHC and the O3 views and just kind of going back and forth, which was quite a bit of fun. And then yeah, after we shut down at around 11 or so, well, the Aurora that was kind of weak at 10 really had kicked up by 10:30 or quarter to 11. And when I went back up to grab my sketching book, I could see there were some pretty big pillars forming up in the background. I got up on a ladder, took a photo of the Aurora over my neighbor's house, and you could see like it cutting up through the Big Dipper, and there's trees, and then you could see his house down below. He has a couple like sort of non-directional lights, and I got to send that off to him. I'm sure he'll like to see it. Pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, so what can people see in the sky this month? So got these carbon stars, and I don't know what what I was doing, but I couldn't get some of them to show up. The one on November 1st is for V, and it came up as AIR or something like that, but I think it's either I think it's Aries is what it should be. So the star V Aries is a carbon star. People can take a look up, but I didn't get a finer chart off because I couldn't get the lookup to work in my software. Like I said, I'm a little bit tired from observing last night, so sometimes that happens. November 2nd, we have Saturn, Neptune, and the Moon congregating in the evening sky. I put a shot of that, and they kind of line up quite lovely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
looks like a kind of a neat grouping. Yeah.
yeah. November 4th, there's two shadows visible on Jupiter. We don't remember last month we had like it seemed like a kabillion
Like every
shadow
day.
transit. Yeah, it was like almost every day, and sort of almost got to be a joke, right? Say, and guess what? Today is another shadow transit day. But we don't have nearly as many this month. November 4th, we have two well timed in the evening, well placed, 10 p.m. for us here. Midnight to our east, slightly earlier to our west along the west coast, maybe would be um, somewhere where we're going to get them earlier in the evening. But I think for us, probably in the middle of North America is probably your best bet on the 4th of seeing these shadow transits, simply because Jupiter rises, there's a shadow that's just coming on, and then the other one comes on. So we have Io and Europa casting shadows quite nicely. And by 10 o'clock, I think it's fairly high to see. But regardless, they last for a little bit. November 5th, we have the full moon, and asteroid Victoria is at opposition. This is a large stony type asteroid from the main asteroid belt, or in the main asteroid belt, discovered in 1850 by Hind, famed Hind from Hind's Variable Nebula. It orbits between Mars and Jupiter. Recently, a meteor event occurred over Victoria, Australia, strangely enough.
Okay.
Just a couple months ago there in August, and it created a sonic boom, and they think that large fragments probably have landed on the ground. So expect more from that.
Ooh, that would be a sort of a fun weekend adventure. Go looking for some meteorites.
I think it would be, yeah, especially to fly to Australia and back for the weekend.
Well, that might be the hard part.
But seriously, though, that's kind of weird that the asteroid Victoria sent off a smaller meteor that landed near Victoria, Australia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because asteroid Victoria, Victoria, Australia. Weird.
Yes.
Let's see. Go ahead.
I just said it is.
Yeah. That's the closest full moon of the year, too, by the way. But I'm not going to get into the whole super moon, blue moon business here. Not at this time. November 5th and 6th, the moon is near the Pleiades, though. So people can enjoy that regardless of where they stand on the controversy. And we have NGCs 253 and 288 well placed in the evening sky in November. These are not real low down, but they're I think 20 or 25 degrees up. And NGC 253 is otherwise known as a Sculptor Galaxy, which is a beautiful large galaxy. And then in the same 2.5 degree field of view, we have NGC 288, which is a large globular cluster. So they form this beautiful pair. And I did put my finder scope plus my main scope circles in. My finder scope is 5 degrees. My main scope is 2.5 degrees. And I'm excited to see that I can get both these NGC objects in the field of my 7-inch at the same time. Shane, pretty excited.
Hmm.
Let's see. Cleomenes sunset rays are visible on the moon on November 7th, and I put a little finer chart in for where Cleomenes is. And then on the 9th, carbon star VX Andromeda is at its best. Now it's about 5 degrees sort of southwest-ish of Andromeda. So if you're up looking at Andromeda and maybe it's getting a little bit too high for your Alt-Az scope, maybe you can drop down and take a look at VX Andromedae, which is a nice, beautiful red carbon star. Oh, and by the best, when we're talking about carbon stars, and I think we put this in a recent podcast, but I did chat with Marie, who made up. Now, she didn't really make up the list so much as translated for calendar purposes. Rick Huziak, I think, is one of the authors of the list, and he and I have been chatting quite a bit, but not about this. Anyway, regardless, so when she says they're at their best, that is when they're at their brightest, but brightest varies. So one might be at its brightest, it could be 10th magnitude. Another one could be 5th magnitude or something. One could be 14th magnitude, like who knows, right? And so how that looks to your eyes as an individual observer and your sensitivity to wavelengths of red light, or whether you're using a pair of binoculars or a big refractor or a small refractor or a giant reflector or who knows what your instrument is. We're just giving it as the brightest to give people the most likelihood of seeing it. Of course, like your mileage will vary based on all those different variables.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're in that, if you're looking for that carbon star VX Andromeda, look for Almach too.
Oh,
Quite a beautiful double. It's very similar to Alberio with a orange and blue star.
nice. On November 10th, we have Jupiter 4 degrees south of the moon, and it is for us here. We actually got that. So could see that pairing of Jupiter and the moon in your 5 degree or wider binoculars or instruments.
Two bright objects.
Awesome. On November 11th, we're going to have the asteroid 471 Papa Agena at opposition. I don't think I'd heard of this one before. Do you?
No, this one is not familiar to me.
And it's an asteroid discovered by Max Wolf on June 7th of 1901. I'm not sure what magnitude it is. I think it's around 9.9 or something. But again, I didn't put as many details as I usually did due to observing fatigue. On November 12th, we have the North Taurid meteor showers. Now, it just comes up as 5, but what happens in the fall and other times of the year, particularly fall and spring, is we get all these overlapping meteor showers, eh? So, yeah, this one has 5, but I think there's probably still a few Orionids, and then I think there's the Leonids coming up on the 17th. So, you kind of get some leading and trailing meteors from each of those that could amount to, who knows, like 2 or 3 meteors an hour or 5 meteors, and then this one is 5 meteors. So there's nights where you go out and yeah, technically there's no meteor shower, or there's like a lesser known meteor shower like this, and you'll just be out getting peppered with meteors. Like I had that before. One of my neighbors was out, and then he was like, "Yeah, you put like there was like this like obscure meteor shower in, and they saw a whole pile of them, right?" So that can happen, if you think about it and you start tracing them back. Yeah, maybe some of these are northern Taurids and some of these are Orionids or whatever. So I think it's a point to make when we're talking about meteors.
For sure.
Let's see. The zodiacal light becomes visible this month as well. So if it's dark and you're in a dark spot, moonless sky, you can take a look for that interplanetary dust that's come off Mars and forms a bit of a pyramid. Just a sec, I got a bug here. I've yes, the bug. There's many of them, these maple bugs. All right. They seem to like me. There was one in the car and it gradually made its way towards me while I was driving. Fun. Okay, so the Zodiacal Light, this is interplanetary dust. Basically, it's been blown off Mars, it seems, according to research in the past half a dozen years. And it becomes visible in the morning sky in the autumn. It's in the evening sky in the spring, just because of the way the Earth and the sun and this dust form a bit of a triangle. We get the reflection back. On the 17th, we get the Leonid meteors. The Leonid meteors are an annual shower. I get about a dozen or so of these meteors. They come from Comet 55P Tempel-Tuttle. They're fast, bright meteors and appear to originate in the constellation Leo. The reason why people may have heard of them is that about every 33 years, we get a really bright Leonid meteor storm. Do you remember when that last one was?
Mm, no, not offhand. There's
I'm
been
gonna look it
a
up.
few flare-ups over, I don't know, the last 5-ish years, I believe, but I
Yeah.
can't remember.
So it looks like 2001, 2002, um, 2001 sort of being the favored date here now that I'm looking back. But
Mhm.
you said, like, and this is just sort of the AI overview coming up from Google, but there was enhanced activity in 2008, 2009. There's been some other years and like total duds in 2019. So it does vary considerably, but I think we're at a fairly new moon period this year on the 17th. And looking forward now, like it's kind of weird. I remember going out and observing that in 2001 and going up to sort of my favorite spot along the coast. And usually I would be observing there alone, and there was like 1,000 people there. It was really weird.
Hmm.
And we saw a lot of meteors, me and
Well,
a
that's good.
thousand other people. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I remember there was a moon in the sky earlier in the evening and then it set and I went home and slept. I went to my friend's near that spot, but he was like, "Oh, we're not gonna stay up all night or whatever." So then came back at later and just kind of went up the road a little bit to like this look off spot. And then when I went back, I had to like drive like a mile down the road and park. So yeah, it was something else. So that's kind of just as I was getting into joining the RASC. I probably should have gone out to the observing site. Would have been a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, we're just like really a handful of years away from for the next one. I guess like 9 years away or so from the potential next big activity. Maybe it lasts what, 5, 6, 7 or 8. Anyway, back to my notes. Where are we here? Okay. The 19th of November, we have Carbon Star WZ or WZ, Canis Majoris at its best. So that's going to be in the morning sky. Again, I didn't look that one up. And on the 20th, that's sort of peak Gegenschein visibility, which is the anti-solar point, which is very high in the south, but not overhead. And what you're seeing there is sunlight being reflected back off Earth's atmosphere. Uh, and 68 Leto is going to be at magnitude 9.9 at opposition. It's an asteroid or minor planet, I guess, main belt asteroid. Not named after Jared Leto, but the asteroid was discovered by German astronomer Robert Luther on April 29th, 1861, and named after Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis in Greek mythology. So
Hmm.
also on the 20th, we have a couple shadow transits on Jupiter. At least that's what it said. But now, like when I run the software, I'm seeing that it looks like there's a few shadow transits over the evening, but I didn't see two on the disk at the same time. So what I'm thinking, Shane, is maybe sort of like how there's other events that happen very briefly. It may be like a brief instant where a couple of these shadows are on the disk of Jupiter at the same time. But if someone's out observing on the 20th of November and they point at Jupiter, they might want to look for when the next shadow transit's going to be, because there are three that night. On the 20th as well, we have Carbon Star TX Pisces or Pisceum, uh, well placed that evening and at its brightest. And it's kind of in the circlet of Pisces. So if people are
Hmm.
familiar with the circlet of Pisces, they can go and take a look at 19 Pisceum is what it comes up as predominantly. And I put a finer chart in there, and it's near Neptune and Saturn, so you can take a peek at those as well.
Yeah, some good anchor points there to locate.
Yeah, 21st of November, we have Uranus at opposition just below the Pleiades. So nicely placed. You can take a look at Uranus. Use some power. You'll see it as sort of an aquamarine color in a telescope. And on the
Do you,
23rd,
do you
what's
know
that?
what magnitude it reaches at opposition?
Oh, I didn't put it in, but typically it's 5.7 or 5.6, I
Yeah.
think is the brightest it ever gets.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Something to that effect. I
Hmm.
could be off by zero point 0.1 magnitude, but I think it's 5.7 this year.
Okay.
I look at the stuff enough. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. On the 23rd, we have Mercury and Venus pair in the morning sky. This one here, the only reason why I put in that they're fairly close to the sun, so be careful there. You want to make sure you never look at the sun unless you're doing solar observing. But just because it tends to stay dark right till almost like right before the sun comes up these days, it seems. And particularly by the end of November. So, and especially the further and further north you get, that sun is going to be further and further down. So, for us, like we can kind of safely observe this event, but depending on your latitude, use appropriate judgment and caution.
Hmm.
Of course, if the sky is getting like really bright, don't go and take a look. But I think we'd be able to see Venus and Mercury here pretty safely.
Right on.
The 24th, we have the Saturn ring tilt at negative 0.37. I'm guessing that's degrees or some sort of angular measurement. I was looking at it last night and wow, those rings are pretty stunted, Shane. They look like tiny little rings now. Like they
Oh,
are
yeah, yeah. Just about edge on.
just just a line. Just a line. And I noted like some bright spots previously. I could not see those last night. These rings are pretty much just all but edge on currently. And here we are on the 19th of October. I'm saying that, and minimum is over a month away for us right now. But of course, when this gets released, it will just be a few weeks. So really, they are going to be very, very razor thin. I could almost imagine them pretty much disappearing if you have like not the best seeing. Last night, the seeing wasn't amazing, and one of those rings really was getting cut up just by the seeing alone.
Mm. Yeah, like we've said, it's not quite as pretty as when you can see all of the detail in the rings, but it still is fun to observe. It's neat to see the rings get that thin.
Yeah, we could see very faintly some of the cloud banding on Saturn as well. I didn't put a filter in or anything, and our seeing was pretty bad. We were running 154 magnification, and it really wasn't quite holding it most of the time. But anyway, yeah, hopefully we get some better seeing conditions. Can take a look. Probably the lake will freeze up here by then, looking at the 24th of November, regardless of how warm it might seem these days. And it's supposed to be 16 degrees this week. Typically by the end of November, that lake has fishing shacks on it, which is
Hmm.
pretty weird to think about. November 27th, we have that lunar X there at the crater Werner. We've talked lots about that in the past. And the
Hmm.
Alphonsus Ray is also visible on the moon. Is it the same night? I think it might be the same night or the following night. But anyway, what you do is, and I put images of all this up. They will go in the show notes, and you can take a look and see as that lunar terminator, as shadow of the moon, crosses these craters. Then you can start to take a look for the Alphonsus sunrise ray. Which what happens there is the sun rises, then it cuts through, but it's gonna vary a little bit. Like here, might be visible, might not, but maybe it's good in California where you have several listeners, or maybe it's going to be better over in England where Mark Radici is, and we'll chat with him in a few weeks. All right, let's see. 28th, we have Lunar Straight Wall visible, which is an escarpment we've chatted lots about in the past. And on the 29th, we have Saturn, Neptune, and the Moon congregating in the evening sky. Put that in. Might be a good photographic opportunity for folks looking to capture all those.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it in my tired state.
No shortage of things to look at as usual, so that's always nice.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to, getting out. Hopefully we get some pretty good observing weather before it gets too crazy cold or too snowy. I feel like more and more prepared every year having the observatory really makes for like last night we were observing it was +1 and with like about a nice 15 to 20 kilometer winds, up to 25 with little gusts, and we were very comfortable observing there. I wore a hat, but for me, I'm lucky. I don't need to wear gloves until it gets really, really cold. So, 1 degree, I don't need to wear gloves. I was totally fine. Like really, gloves are like a minus 10 thing if I'm observing and sketching and all that. I can go pretty far without a pair of gloves. I do get chapped hands quite a bit, so but that's my only nemesis for being out in the cold, it seems. So fingers crossed we get some good weather, Shane.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping that the warming or like our kind of above average temperatures continue and we can have some somewhat comfortable observing before the cold really sets in.
Yeah. Do you have any observing plans for the autumn? The rest of the autumn? Colder
Just
autumn?
my usual stuff of hidden treasures from O'Meara, getting into carbon stars from the backyard as well, and
Nice.
just continue looking at doubles as much as I can, and now that Jupiter and Saturn are becoming a little more prominent
Mm,
in the earlier evening, do some planetary as well.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds good. I keep thinking we have those eye pieces from Justin. We gotta try to do a night with those.
Hmm.
Put that on the agenda for now that we got the planets back up. And now also we have Alistair's ADR to try too. And yeah, I think we have a few things here to experiment with, which we should get these things back to people. It just we got them at a bad time when the planets were going away. So yep, that's the story.
Hmm.
All right. Anything else to add to this show?
That's all, Chris.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Shane. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know. Send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.